and do the steps that it takes to get to that goal. And if you go into practice and you decide I'm going to work on one of these tools or all of these tools or whatever you're going to do, experiment. We always have to be on this journey of discovery. Hi, everyone. I am Crystal McDaniel, and this is The Naked Singer. Thank you so much for being here today. This is our second episode, and we're continuing our discussion on motivation for the month of February. This will be the last discussion on motivation, though I think that motivation is always behind every single thing that we do. So we're probably going to continue to see how motivation is going to affect us as we go along, episode after episode. Last week's was very successful. We thank everyone who listened in, and hopefully we're picking up momentum and picking up new listeners every week. So please make sure that you do that. Remember that our blog is on the www.thenakedsinger.com. So our podcast delves deeper on the subject matter that has been on the blog for the week. So check that out and make a comment and follow it and share it with everybody, because we really want to help as many people as we possibly can. So I'm going to jump right into our subject matter, which I blended two things today. So we're talking about your motivation will come from being yourself, and why are you here? So we're taking both of those things and we're putting them together. And I'm just going to start out telling you that there is no such thing as too much. I heard growing up that I was too much this or I was too that. And that was really a very hard thing for me to hear growing up, because I was constantly trying to figure out, well, then how do I stop being too much? If I'm too much, then how do I not be too much? Like for instance, if you are too fast or you're too slow or you're too tall or you're too short, how do you actually fix any of those things? Because I don't know about you, but when I stopped growing, there wasn't much more I could do about being short. I'm only 5'1.5", and I can't really do anything about that unless I put on heels, which I frequently do. And tall people, they tend to try to make themselves smaller because everybody says, oh, you're too tall. Well, what are they supposed to do about that? And besides that, I was also told constantly that I talked too much. Well, my answer to that now is a little different than it was then. I used to just try to be quieter and quieter and quieter, and try to just not let anybody know that I was really around. But now I realize, there are all these cell phone industries, and people are always on a cell phone, and they always have their earpieces in, and they're constantly talking to somebody. So I think that somebody tapped into that talking too much market really, really well, and I wish it had been me that had thought of it. That's all I have to say about that, because now talking seems to be a billion-dollar industry. I just want you to know that there really is no such thing as too much. I think that it simply means that we need to become focused. If somebody says that we're too much of something, I think that it means that we need to really become focused on what it is we want to do as an individual. I know for me, when I was told that I talked too much, a lot of the reasons that I talked a lot was because I was trying to discover myself. And I was trying to fit in, and I felt very insecure and very lost. And I just wanted to know where I fit in and who I was. And a lot of it was just childhood damage that had gone on and on, where I was using talking as a defense mechanism rather than to just actually get down into the core of myself and figure out what was really wrong and what was bothering me. So I think we have to really become focused on what we want as an individual. Once I did that, I got a much better handle on the talking part, because it had really more to do with anxiety and fear than anything. And I want you to know that when I became focused, I started dividing things into three categories. One was personal, and one is my studio, and one is about career and dreams. And I actually have this broken down in my day planner. I have a day planner that allows me to have the freedom to develop it the way I want to develop it. So I break it down that way. So I have my personal first, and then I have my studio things that I do for the studio every day, and then I have my career and dreams. And that helps me decide what I'm going to do that day and how I'm going to remain focused. So I'm just not running willy-nilly talking about things that I really haven't thought about or planned out or anything else. So that's one of the ways that I do it. And I will actually post a photo of this on the blog site when I get finished. I will actually post that on there so you can see how I actually divide that up, because that really helps me to laser beam focus and not just go crazy with all the thoughts that go around, and so that I'm just spinning and spinning and spinning on one idea or another. And I'm using this ability to dream that I have because I was always called a dreamer, that you just dream too much. You have too many dreams. And I thought, well, okay, but I thought we were supposed to dream. I thought that we were supposed to dream big. I know I've known other um, motivational speakers to talk about how they dream big and they want to dream big and that we should dream big. But then I was constantly being told that I dream too much. And I thought, well, how is that actually possible? So I started sitting down and thinking about how I can actually focus the comment that I dream too much. So I'm using my ability to dream and envision what I want to accomplish for the day and the week and the month. And that's why I break things down so I can laser beam focus everything that I want to get done, so that then it's not, oh, she's just a dreamer. It's actually, I'm a doer, because I'm a big proponent of walking the walk and not just talking the talk. So I break it down that way, and that's why I use the planner, and I divide it in those three actual ways of applying how I get to my dreams. So I have just turned a too much statement about me into a strength statement about myself, so that I can empower myself in order to be able to get done what I need to be getting done. And then I'm more walking the walk than I am talking the talk. And I think that that's something that we have as individuals. We have the ability to be able to do that. I think sometimes we just get lost in all the twos. And when I say twos, I'm not talking about TWOS as in the number. I'm talking about TOOS. When we are told over and over again, you're to this or you're to that, I think that we have to sit down and figure out what it is that we're to, and understand that that is actually our strength, and turn that completely into a positive, so that we can use the power and the drive behind that. I have a dream and a goal, even for this podcast. I have a dream and a goal, even for this podcast. However, I don't just stare at the dream. I actually plan out everything. Like today, we're talking about motivation, and I actually have notes in front of me, and I am actually talking from those notes where I have planned out exactly how I want this to go. Now, I know people that use dream boards and vision boards. I've tried that before, and I've got to honestly tell you that vision boards have never worked well for me, because I end up just staring at them and feeling very, very overwhelmed by seeing all that I want to accomplish in life. And so I decided that I was going to stop using the vision board. Now, for those of you that love to use vision boards and they work for you, I am so happy for you, because that's just not something that was working for me, but I'm sure glad that it works for you, because any tool that gets us towards the focus of our power and our dreams and our goals, I think that that's what we should be able to use and do in our everyday lives. It's just not something that really ever worked for me. So I have to break things down into very small, digestible bites. When I look at a vision board, I see everything, and I'm not sure I'm going to accomplish that. But when I sit down and I focus on one thing and I start chopping into that for the week, it makes it a lot easier for me to be able to do that. I have to envision my goal and my dream first, and then I start thinking about where I am now. So I actually draw a line from you are here, sort of like when we go to the mall and we see the big map directory and it says you are here. And that's sort of what I do. I go, you are here. Here I am. And then I draw a line and then I put my dream goal on the other end of that line. And then I start breaking down how I'm going to walk that line. What are the steps that I'm going to walk in order to get to that goal? Because if I just jump to the goal, then I've performed a miracle, because that doesn't really happen very often, that we can just say, I'm going to do this, and then all of a sudden the next day it appears. We actually have to take tiny little steps every single day towards that goal. And I know this stuff usually feels very obvious, and we think, well, that's an obvious thing, but it's not such an obvious thing, because there are so many people that have had so many dreams and goals in their lives and they've never achieved them. And mostly it's because they feel like that there's this insurmountable thing that is in front of them, when actually all you have to do is break it down into these small bite-sized goals. Now, my husband, Nelson, he loves to say, how do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time. Now, a lot of people have looked at me when I've quoted him and they've gone, gross. That's really disgusting. I don't want to eat an elephant. But I don't think he really means like an actual elephant. I think that it's just talking about that we have to take something large and put it into little bite-sized things so that we can consume it. And that's really the point of the whole thing. I brainstorm a lot. I brainstorm a lot. I do a lot of writing. I go through a lot of paper and a lot of pens. And so I sit down with my paper and I'm constantly writing down different things that pop in my mind. And I write them down so that they're there in front of me and tangible, and I can research them and expound on them, or whatever I feel like doing with those ideas at the time. Sometimes they never come to fruition, and sometimes they absolutely come to fruition. It just depends on what I really feel like is worth my time to go into, because not everything I think is worth my time. How about that? Not everything we think and we come up with is worth our own time. Sometimes that's something that we need to pass on to somebody else, and I think that that's important. So I think in the end, we have to just decide what is actually important to us to put our focus into. Like, this podcast was very important to me. And so I really started researching, and I started looking at things, and I started getting the equipment together, and I have this internal tick inside of me. It almost feels like a magnet that's just drawn to do it. So I know that that's the right thing for me to do. And so I schedule everything around that. And I find that to be really important. And I want to say that because we don't really think about the importance of surrounding ourselves and choosing our time around what we want, instead of just letting everything float and come our way. When I talk to students about practicing, that's one of the biggest things that they have, is they have this problem actually practicing. But if you were talking to an Olympic athlete, for instance, you're going to find somebody that is disciplined. You're going to find somebody that decides that maybe they can put off going to the mall with their friends or going to a movie with their friends in order to make sure that they're working out and they're practicing that day. And it does take sacrifice. It takes a lot of sacrifice and planning on the part of the student and a part of their family, actually. So many times I hear, well, I couldn't practice because my mom and dad already had this planned. And I want to say to the parents that I understand that you want to do things as a family. My family wants to do that too. But when my children were growing up, one of the things that they did was that they chose to do their practicing. Like I'm going to give an example of my daughter Rachel. She's a cellist, and she's getting her master's degree at the University of Miami in media composition. But as a cellist, when she was coming through school, middle school, high school, if a trip to Disneyland was planned, that cello went. And if they had park time, what she did was that they divided the time up, because I know she went with her dad, and they divided their time up. So in the afternoon, they would come in for a couple of hours and rest from doing all the park activities. And that's when Rachel would practice. And then they would go out and do the park activities. So she didn't actually miss seeing Disney World. She got her practice in. So I want to encourage parents to understand that just as baseball practice and football practice and basketball practice and cheer practice and soccer practice and whatever practice you can think of, just like that demands the time for your child, and you show up and you do those travel teams and you go and do those things, just like that happens, and you plan your trips and your life around that child's athletic activity, you have to do the same thing for your musician child, for your artist child. They need that practice too. And they need that ability to know that that practice is important and that you understand that they need that type of support. So please make sure that you look at your schedules and put the practice in, and whatever you do it around that, not the other way around. I got to honestly tell you, I haven't missed out on a lot in life just because I had to rearrange my life around my practice time. I really honestly haven't. I have had a wonderful, joy-filled life, and I'm not really missing out on much just because I've gone to Europe and New York, and I get to go to shows, and I get to do a lot of things. And so you're not going to miss out on life, but it is important that you teach your child how to discipline themselves so that they can take what is considered too much and put it in the right focus and have the right strength for us. I put all positives and all obstacles on the timeline that I put out together between where I am right now and my goal. So I'm going back to that line that I do, and I put all the positives and all the obstacles on that line. And I think it's important that we do that because too many times we look at the great thing that can happen when we meet that goal, whether it be financial or, some sort of joy or some sort of fame that we're going to get or whatever we think we're going to receive when we meet that goal. We put all of our effort and energy into that thought, and we forget the fact that there's all of these steps in between. And there are going to be obstacles. There are going to be disappointments. There are going to be setbacks. Is going to be time that you feel discouraged on this road. And you've got to know and plan for that. And make sure you understand that those things and that sacrifice is a part of reaching that goal. It doesn't mean that the goal isn't meant for you or that dream just isn't yours. It means that you have to think ahead and keep walking that pathway, because the only way that you're going to do that is to grow and learn through those opportunities. Every single time there has been a discouragement or a setback, in my own life and in my own journey, I have looked back later and thought, well, what did I learn? What opportunity happened there that I can change and use to my benefit? If I don't find it as a benefit, then what was it for in the first place? Then all the pain that we go through is just not worth it. And that makes no sense. It makes no sense to be put on this earth only to suffer and have pain. So I think we have to learn from the suffering and from the pain. Now, I realize that there are a lot of people out there that are constantly suffering and they have pain. If I think about the stories even from concentration camps and the Holocaust, I think about some of the things and stories that came out of that. And I know one of my favorites is a man who actually was praying on his knees in the concentration camp, and another of his fellow camp members came up to him and said, how can you pray and even be thankful for this situation? And he said, well, I'm on my knees right now thanking God that I'm not like them. I think we have to think like that. I think that no matter what our situation, we have to find something in it that keeps us moving and keeps us growing and keeps us going and keeps us learning, because there's never going to be a situation that is too hard. We can get through all of these things. And when I'm going through this, I also promised myself in the beginning to stay insatiably curious about what I'm doing. So I will always be open to learning. So I stay the course because I stay insatiably curious. Like, I want to know how it turns out. I want to know what I'm going to learn. I want to know who I'm going to meet. So I have to keep that curiosity going all the time. I've learned over the years that if I work from my strengths, my weaknesses will take care of themselves. I used to be a very impatient person, and patience is one of the ways that I get described now. Now, that doesn't mean that I feel like I'm a patient person. A lot of times I feel very impatient. However, I know over the years I have learned to wait and learn to wait gracefully. And that's a hard skill for us to learn in life, is how to wait patiently and wait gracefully, and also to give grace to others while we're waiting. While I'm waiting for a student to grow and they're struggling, I work very hard not to get angry or disappointed or aggravated at them during their work, because they're there. They showed up. They tried to work. So I try to think about encouraging things to say to them, even though sometimes I'm very frustrated myself. And that's one of the ways that I know that I've learned patience, and that helping somebody is more important, because they are more important than the way I feel about it. And I think that that's a really important thing that we have to learn to manifest in our lives. If you're going to be a great runner, you are going to need to know how to run. Now, I know it just sounds like I made a really big shift, but it has everything to do with learning and growing and staying the course. So if we're going to reach that goal, and if your goal is to be a great runner, then you're going to have to learn how to run. But it just depends on what your goal is, whether you want to be fast or whether you're going to be slow. I love to run, but I'm not fast, and I am never going to be fast. I mean, I am 5'1.5", and I'm sure there are really fast, short people out there. I'm not one of them. There is nothing big on my body whatsoever. So my little legs are about 2 inches long, and I just run, and it seems like I get nowhere sometimes. However, what I have learned is I have tremendous endurance. And so when I run, I've done half marathons. I've done 3 half marathons before. And in those half marathons, they took me, I guess the longest one was like 3 hours. It was about 3 hours and 20 minutes, something like that. I ran for 3 hours and 20 minutes. That's endurance. It takes a lot of work to run for that long a period of time. Now, I'm not gonna lie, I'm gonna tell you that the person, because I was running a half marathon at the same time that others were running a marathon, and the person that ran the marathon ran it in some incredibly fast time and was finished way before I even came across the finish line, which I find to be not only mind-boggling but hysterical, because, they were running 26 miles and I was running 13, and it still took me 3 hours and 20 minutes. But my goal was never to win. My goal was to cross the finish line. It was to cross the finish line and maintain my pace. And that's something that I do. If I start out at one pace, I will end at the exact same pace. And that's a strength. And that's a superpower that I feel like that I have, because I continue to consistently maintain the same pace, minute after minute after minute after minute. I'm not going to tell you that that's easy to do, but I am going to tell you that it's worth every minute that I do it, because that means I don't stop, and I'm looking for that finish line. And I am grateful for that particular ability. I am never going to run faster. So my goal is not to run faster. My goal is to keep the endurance. And I think everything we do, we have to realize that we're running a marathon, especially when we have a large dream and we've set that goal and we're going on these day-to-day journey to get there. I think that we have to realize that we're doing a marathon. We are not doing a sprint. Now, for those of you that can sprint, yay! You fast people, I'm so excited for you. I wish I could be like that, but I'm not. So I celebrate the fact that I have great endurance, and I'm happy with that. And I'm so glad that you can run fast. You just keep running fast, because, yay you. There will be people that are always faster than you. I mean, when I'm running a marathon, I am always, not a marathon, half marathon, I am always in the last fourth of the race. I'm always in that bottom fourth that comes over the finish line. There are always going to be people faster than you. And there are always going to be people slower than you. There are people that are still behind me. Even when I cross that finish line, I'm not the last one. And that's what I keep telling myself. I'm not the last one. But the people that are in that last, I try to keep telling them, you can do it. Let's keep going. We can do this together. My concern is never how fast or how slow, but how I do my own journey. And I think that that is really important. In the Bible, in John, the book of John, chapter 21, verse 21 and 22, Peter asked Jesus, "Lord, what about him?" And Jesus answered, "If I want him to remain alive until I return, what is that to you? You must follow me." In other words, what our goals are and our purpose on this earth has nothing to do with anyone else but us. My goal is my goal. My goal is not my husband's goal, and therefore he's not responsible for it. My goal is not my children's goal, and therefore they're not responsible for it. It wasn't my parents' goal. I don't look at this person and compare, and that person is compared, because believe me, doing a podcast, there are a lot of people to compare yourself to. And all I can be is me. All I can do is fulfill the purpose that I have and tell you about my experiences and how I deal with it and what inspires me. In the end, what you do is what you do. That's what's important, is to not compare, but just to continue walking your own path, the path that was placed in front of you. That is where you're going to achieve the most. And that's where you're going to start understanding how to harness the power of our twos. And again, that's not the number two, TWO. That is the word TOOS. The power of being too talkative, or too tall, or too short, or too skinny, or too fat, or too whatever you've ever been told. That's where we start to harness that power, when we stop paying attention to everyone else and we start paying attention to the power and the divine that is within us, calling us to walk that path on earth. And when I say divine, I'm talking about God. I don't know about you, but that's what I'm talking about. We need to pay attention to if we are teachable. If we are not teachable, we're not going to get very far. That's where our growth is. So until we can decide to be humble and to deal with humility and become teachable, there's no point. No one person knows everything. Just because you were born with the ability to sing doesn't mean you can become a great singer. Just because you are born fast doesn't mean you're going to become the fastest person in the world. Just because you were born with a large stature like a football player doesn't mean you're going to be a great football player. You actually have to put work behind it. You actually have to see a goal, know where you are now, and then do the steps that it takes to get to that goal. I know a family right now that have two boys that have been working for years to become great football players, to get into college as a great football player. And let me tell you something, those boys work hard every single day of their lives. Every single day of their lives. I've watched videos because their oldest sister just happens to be my personal assistant. And I watch videos of these boys, and I have since they were, maybe middle school or before, and they get out there and they work it. And it's amazing to me to see people with that type of commitment and dedication to what they do, and that type of sacrifice to what they do, so they continue to remain teachable. And we have to continue to remain in that teachable mode, and that learnable mode, and that disciplined mode that puts us up there every day working towards that goal, or we're never going to get there. We have to be on a journey of discovery. We always need to be on this journey to discover what we're capable of, what we're good at, what we're not good at, what somebody else needs to do, how to organize our time, how to learn more, how to get our brains to grow more. We always have to be on this journey of discovery. My students sometimes struggle with practicing. They find practicing intimidating. My mother was a great cook, but she was also a great baker and a great candy maker. And she used to say, throw the flour and break the eggs. And when it is over, we'll clean it up when it's in the oven. And therein lies the simplicity of it. If you're intimidated by practice, if you're intimidated by doing something, you are going to make a mess. You're going to throw the flour and you're going to break some eggs, and it's going to get all over your kitchen, and it's going to be messy, and you're going to put it in the oven, and sometimes the cake is going to fall. Sometimes you're working on doing a souffle, and the souffle will actually implode. Sometimes that pie will come out runny. That's the way it is when you're experimenting and when you're learning. There's going to be a mess. It's not always going to come out the way you want it to. And sometimes you're going to have to start over. But the point is experimentation. The point is to feel it, learn from it, and do it again. And then we're going to feel it, and then we're going to learn from it, and then we're going to do it again. And we're going to keep doing that and keep doing that and keep doing that. And the more we do that, the more we're going to get it right. You know, there was a time when there was no cake. Sometimes I wonder who learned to put this much oil and this much flour and this much sugar. You know, that was all experimentation. Who learned that the egg would do this and that baking powder would do this? Who even came up with baking powder, for heaven's sakes? Everything is all about experimentation. It is going to be messy. When you get into that practice room as a singer and you start being intimidated, you need to understand that you're not going to like your voice every single time. It's not always going to be what you want it to be. But if you have the tools in front of you and you keep working at it, it's going to work out. And singing is more than just memorization and words, by the way. If you understand posture, and you understand space, and you understand energy, and you understand the simplicity of how those three things work together, then you have your tools. And if you go into practice and you decide, I'm going to work on one of these tools or all of these tools or whatever you're going to do, experiment. Experiment with them. Experiment with your voice. That's how you're going to learn. When we apply it, we learn it. And the only way to apply it is to experiment. That's what learning is for. Everything we do is an experiment. That's why in science there are hypotheses and theories. And you have to prove how these things are going to do. That's what we're doing. Every day of our lives, we're coming up with our theory and our hypothesis, and we're just throwing something out there to see if it works. When it works and it all comes together after the practice, then our goal can be achieved. And that is so very important. Now, as I tie this podcast up for this week, I'm going to give you the books for the week. I gave you some books last week that are my favorites to read. I hope that you wrote those down. This week, the books that I'm dealing with are The Inner Game of Tennis by W. Timothy Gallwey. It's a great book. Now, if you're not a singer, or if you are a singer, it really doesn't matter if you're a singer because it's called The Inner Game of Tennis. But this book breaks things down and really can help you with your head game and help you learn to apply and do better as a person and as an athlete or even as a singer. It's a great book. Another book that I have read and I really enjoyed is called The Subtle Art of Not Giving a F. And you can fill in the letters for the rest of that. It's literally called that. And it's by Mark Manson. It is a really great book. It's an easy read, easy application, but I do bring that one with a warning. There is a lot of language in it. So if that's not your cup of tea, then it's probably not the book for you. It doesn't bother me, so I thought it was a really great read. And then the other book that I will be starting on is Will, and it's by Will Smith and Mark Manson. Will Smith actually hired Mark Manson to help him with this book, and I cannot wait to get into it to see what Will Smith has to say because I find Will Smith to be a very inspirational person. My thanks that I had last week, I left a couple of people off, so I want to give that right now. I want to say thank you very much to Nathan and Jeanette Childers. You have been our friends for years. Thank you for all the work that you are doing right now. You know what I'm talking about. Thank you for going out in the world and trusting God with your lives. Thank you for sharing love with people every single place you go. You are such an inspiration to me, and I love you both so very much. My last thanks goes to Eugene Broncovianu. You are my keeper of secrets. You are the rock that I have in my life. You are more than a friend. I am so grateful for the day that God brought you into my life. And I am thankful that I get to walk life's journey with you as my friend. Thank you so much, Eugene, for everything all the time. All right, we're tying it up right now. Everyone, next month, March, we will be starting the new subject matter of communication. Don't forget to subscribe to the podcast, to follow the podcast, to share the podcast, to go to the blog, www.thenakedsinger.com, and read the blog and follow and share that. Also, you can find us on Spotify right now, on Audible, on Amazon Music, and you can find us on YouTube. Although, please make sure that you search Crystal, Crystal, and then space, capital V, THE, capital T, capital N, naked, capital S, singer, and put that all as one word. If you do anything else, oops, you might end up seeing something that you don't want to see. So please don't do that. Do it exactly the way I just told you to do it. Other than that, we will see you next week. Actually, we won't see you. We will be listening for you next week. And that's the end for today. I've enjoyed our time together. I am Crystal McDaniel, and this is The Naked Singer.